What's up, guys? So this is going to be the first case study I do. Um, some of them I might do all three lifts, or I might break them up into different, depending on just how long this one takes, I guess. So let's get right into it. And then one more note, I guess. The title is going to be something like 425 by 2 to 475 by 1 in 9 weeks. Technically, this is over 14 weeks, but that is the end of block 1 to the end of block 3, which is 9 weeks. Technically, he did make more progress than that because he did make progress in block 1. I just didn't know exactly how to quantify his PR at first because in training, a lot of the times he was squatting a little bit high, and then in the meet, he squatted like 395, and then he missed 440. So, like, I didn't know exactly where to put that, and it felt like dishonest to type anything if I didn't have like just the hard numbers, just the facts. So there's your explanation, but technically it was a little bit more progress than that, but also a little bit longer. So I put in this PR at 430, just to give you guys some like intensities, just as like a rough guess. Um, First thing you're gonna notice is, well, I guess first start off kind of like a middle of the road volume, what I'd give someone all around, as well as just based off like the past program he was running and everything. But he started with me right after the meet. I noticed at the meet that like his attempts, like the 395, was moving super super fast, but then he'd go up heavier and just get kind of crushed. So it was very clear that he was just very fatigued, and that was suppressing his top end. So even though we were starting technically at like 82%, it wasn't like by the last set it was an RP 9. It was like RP 6. Things were moving really, really well and fast. So I know it says 82%, but it seems like very high for what it actually was. Um, anyway, we go on to the primary day. We got triples this block, and then a back off set of 6, and then 2 sets of leg extensions. Go on to week 2, and we're noticing that things are moving pretty well still. Not horrible, but he's definitely like the 385 visually was just a little bit worse than I thought it should have been compared to the 375 the week before. So we go into the week 3, and I cut a set. So instead of 4 sets on the secondary day, it's just 3 sets. And then another thing too is he was just struggling with his descent speed and everything. Just didn't feel super confident on the primary. So I decided just let's get him some more heavy exposure, some more heavy practice. And so we cut it from fours all the way down to doubles on this day. Sometimes if someone's struggling with like technique and everything, you can definitely do just like more sets, but make them more sub max so they can just get under the bar more. In this case, that wasn't the move because a large part of it was just confidence specifically with heavy weights. So anyway, go back into the primary. 395 for triple this week is blazing, moving way faster than it was with 385 the week prior. So this is already a great sign. He felt way more confident, was able to descend quicker, feeling a little lighter on his back and everything. But you'll also notice we dropped 1 set of leg extensions here. The reason being is he was still just like pretty darn sore. So I was like, okay, you're probably still fatigued. I'm assuming the old program you're running was just quite a bit too much volume. So pull back that. He is doing really well in the week 4. Things go well, but he honestly is still feeling a little bit fatigued. So we go into the week 5 and just run a little bit of a taper. Do a 2x2 instead of a 3x2. That's a 390. Again, it says like 90%. This wasn't like for a lot of people, that's like a 4 rep max. So that'd be like an RP 8 and then like an RP probably 9 the second set. That wasn't the case. It was moving pretty smooth, maybe like a 6 and a 7, something like that. So then we go into and also keep in mind he got stronger at this point as well. So it's naturally going to be not 90% anymore. Then we go into the primary, and I think the range is like 415 to 425. He hit 425 for double, missed the third. That's okay. It was already pretty sick double PR. But there were a couple things here. One, depth had improved a bunch throughout the block. Definitely wasn't perfect at this point yet, but substantially better. And then 2, on the third rep, he was just still struggling with confidence a little bit from the week prior with 405, then also with the 425. Just anything above like 4 plates was kind of getting in his head. It was kind of like a mental block he had. Whenever we first started, it was like kind of like 365, 3 plates and 25 on the bar, kind of got in his head. And whenever we made that secondary day a little bit heavier, that really helped. But here, he also got a little bit shifty on the third rep. Just in the hole, the position wasn't quite right, so he shifted to the right, I believe, if I recall correctly, and then narrowly missed it. So I do think he could have done like 420 for 3, but 425 for 3, it was just a little bit too much. Going into block 2, estimated max somewhere around like 450 at this point, just to give you more accurate intensity percentages. I decided that the main things we need to attack here were going to be just confidence with heavy weights and just more squat practice to avoid that shifting, because it really wasn't like a natural hip shift. It was just like he just got out of position. It was just like never happens. Just was a weird rep, right? Just a misgroove. So the things we're trying to tackle here: going heavy, getting exposure to 405, and then also just more squatting within his recovery means, obviously. So the secondary day, what that's going to look like is a 2x3 with 370 and then a fatigue single. I like basically never give out fatigue singles on lower body lifts. I mean, occasionally, but in a case like this, it's absolutely perfect. If this isn't the case, normally I wouldn't do it though. But yeah, starting off with 405 there, and was moving pretty smooth. This throughout the block got its confidence up a ton. And then on the main day, you'll notice we cut out the leg extensions. The reason being, we just wanted him to do more squatting. He doesn't have a ton of recovery, so you can only do so many sets, especially when you're trying to go heavy, to get used to going heavy. And you're not going to be able to do as many sets, obviously, if the RP and everything is higher. He's also a very quad dominant squatter, though, so I wasn't really concerned about him losing a bunch of quad gains or something. A lot of people that are super bent over could probably do their exact same amount of squat volume and then add quads in on top of it, because their squat is really draining on, like the erectors, the glutes, the adductor, magnus, that kind of stuff. And then they have a lot of quad that they can still like work because they're not using as much quad during their squat. But in his case, he's really maximally using a ton of quad, so kind of leg extensions allowed him to get in some more squatting, especially since he's going so heavy, like I said. And that was the main reason for it. So we just replaced that with some extra sets throughout the week, because I think the last block, let me check, we ended with only 4 sets and then 1 set of leg extensions. So yeah, we're doing 6 sets of squats now. And also another thing is, whenever you're at pretty heavy weights, I guess let me start over. So when you're trying to get hypertrophy, if you're doing 70% and you do a set of 5 and it's RPE 0, that's not really going to do a whole lot for you, right? You have to be pretty close to failure. However, if you're doing 80, 85, 90%, even the first reps are going to be way more stimulating. So in his particular case, even though it's pretty low reps, which isn't ideal for hypertrophy, and some of the stuff is a bit further from failure, kind of leg extensions, it wasn't a massive concern because his quads are still going to be growing for all the reasons I said earlier, and because on most of the sets, he's still going to be getting maximum motor unit recruitment from just the get-go if he's doing a set of 85% for a 2x3 like he was a couple weeks into the block, right? So anyway, I think that's pretty much everything with week 1. We go into week 2, and he's still just fatigued already. So we cut back on the set of 2x3. It's just a 1x3 now. We go into the primary. Things are moving well. Go into the following week. Things are still going pretty well. This whole time, things weren't moving just quite perfect, especially in the primary. So we ended up cutting 1 more set. So literally just 4 high-intensity sets of squats throughout the week at this point. And then he comes into the week 4. The secondary, this is where performance really blew up, and we just saw a massive performance boost where it was coming from that meet. I was man, his just top end just seems like it just visually, it should just be higher. Things move really fast, he gets top end, it's just not there. So we cut out that set, and now at this point, it's only 4 sets a week. They're all pretty high intensity, so it kind of makes sense. This isn't super common that athletes only do 4 sets of squats a week, of course, and a lot of it is just because he's going so heavy to practice that, which helped a ton. As you can see, because he made a ton of progress. But there are definitely some. It's not unheard of for athletes to not be able to handle a ton of lower body volume, especially on his squat. He can't handle a ton, but he does just as much. Most people can't really handle much deadlifting compared to squatting. A lot of people I coach, maybe they can handle half the deadlifts that they can of the squats, or some people can handle a decent amount of squats and not really much deadlifts. But in his case, he can handle pretty much just as much volume and intensity on deadlifts as he can on squats. So, kind of unique case here. But yeah, this is where things really blew up. He went onto the primary. I don't remember exactly what happened. I think he had to train at a different gym than normal, and I don't know. It was 440 or 445 for a double. I should probably pull up the video. I'll pull up some videos and overlay this. But things are feeling a lot better. He either hit it for a double, or he hit it and hit the bottom, hit it for single, and then re-warmed up and hit it for the other single at like RP9. I can't remember. It was something like that. So it's not quite the perfect end of the block, but strength was obviously way up. So then we go into block 3 here, put in the estimated max around like 465. I was even thinking like maybe closer to 475, just based off of the speed on the secondary day, even though the primary was just a weird instance with like hitting the pins or whatever happened. So here, the depth is a lot better. We're still struggling with that a little bit and want a little bit more stability. So we're doing some pause squats, keeping it very heavy. Well, not quite as heavy, but pretty darn heavy still on the secondary day, just to help feel out that depth and stability in the hole. That's the main reason for the pause squats. But then we go into the primary, doing singles, obviously. I wanted to start this off fairly heavy again, so by the time that he's hitting, like... Sorry, I don't think I typed this in right. Yeah, I definitely did not type this in right. That is supposed to be not 405. It's supposed to be 425. Week 2 is 435. Week 3 is 445. And week 5, or sorry, I don't know what I'm saying. Okay, it was 425, 435, 445, 455, and then goes for PR in week 5. And another note is it was a 5-week block, 4-week block, and 5-week block, just because we had to shift things around for like a meet. He didn't end up doing a meet, but he actually picked out a meet. And we were like, okay, well, we need 2 4-week blocks. We're setting up another block right now. We can just repeat this 3-2-1 macro cycle, and we can just, every time we do the doubles block, it can just be a 4-week block because we need 2 4-week blocks. So just worked out pretty well like that. Anyway, ignore the mistake I made at the singles. Sorry about that. But I wanted to force him to hit 455, just because that's kind of a nice milestone PR. I know 4 plates in 25. Wanted to make sure we did that on week 4, just to give him confidence, and then feel free to like send something a little bigger after, and as well as just touch something very heavy so that he feels really confident too. I also knew that would be sub-max by that point because he was just absolutely killing it, making progress super fast. So anyway, we go on to week 2, and this block was like pretty darn smooth sailing. The sets and everything, like we had down dialed. It's kind of a weird case. We started with like 6 sets of squats and like 2 sets of leg extensions. We're basically kind of like cutting that volume in half, basically. So it took us like 8 weeks to figure that out. And then from there, things have been very smooth sailing. But yeah, he showed up just a tiny bit flat week 1. So I was like, okay, let's push the intensity. Let's add 15 pounds on the secondary day. Added that in. Showed up great in week 3. Still really smooth sailing. Week 4, really smooth sailing. Was maybe feeling a tiny bit of fatigue in week 4, but he hit the 455 we're really happy about, and it moved great. He was just starting to show signs of fatigue, a little more soreness than normal, pretty heavy on the back, but he had great depth at 455 as well, which is awesome. We were super happy about that. And so what we did week 5 is I didn't want to make some drastic change because he was just a tiny bit fatigued, but I also didn't want it to bite us in the butt and have it build up and just destroy us by week 5. So we added our 5 pounds on the secondary like normal. But instead of a 2x2, it was just a 2x1. So you're still getting the 2 sets in there. You're adding a little bit extra weight, but technically that's like half the total reps. He came in. It felt absolutely perfect on the final primary of the block. Not sure why I forgot to type this in as well. Sorry about that. But it's supposed to say 475 for one. In the notes you'll see it says big PR, which was the case. And he went 485 after and missed. The plan was we thought 485 was around there for the top end, but we knew that confidence might get in the way a little bit, even though confidence was much better, and it would be close. So we'd rather get 475 for PR and then potentially gas ourselves for the 485, which seemed to happen, then just jump from 455 to 485 and potentially miss it. So that's what we did. It went really well. He cut the 475 just a tiny bit higher than we would have liked. It was a little bit higher than the 455 the week prior, but it's substantially better than the depth he had whenever he came to me. So we are super happy with that. We're currently on like week 3 of block 4 or something. So what we're doing right now is we're continuing the pause squats and just really focusing on depth. So essentially, the plan is just every single rep from the beginning of the block needs to be depth, and that's in the secondary, that's in the primary, that's back offs, everything. If anything, we're dunking them. And then by the end of the block, by week 5, it's not even going to be like an inclination to accidentally squat it high. And another thing is we just want to make sure we can like finish with a really successful lift. Not that it matters a ton if you're hitting a double PR and failing the triple, but it's still a PR. That's still a sign of strength progress, but it just leaves you just leave the block feeling better about it and being happier. So we're just trying to end with something like 440, 4 to 445, and make sure we hit it. Worst case, it's like RPE 9. I'll like, okay, go for it, hit another rep, that's totally fine, or just leave it at an RPE 9. And yeah, that's basically the plan. Just leave the block feeling really good and keep the momentum rolling. And then another thing is slightly higher reps this block, just because he's gotten a lot more confidence with heavyweights. It's just really the depth confidence that we need, and I'd rather bias slightly higher reps, a little more hypertrophy now that we've gotten that out of the way largely. And his confidence with depth has been so good already. Only 3 weeks in, he's nailing depth like basically every single time. And one more thing I did want to add, I didn't mention on the blocks 1 and 2, we just like cut some back offs or the back off by block 2 on the week 5 primary, just as a little back end deload, just so we can start up the next block a little bit easier and not be super cooked. Okay, but anyway, going forward, he's making a ton of progress, and then the plan for next block in block 5 is we're probably going to start swapping out the pause squats for a high bar squat. The reason being is solely just he's not really having a ton of quad issues with recovery. It's more so like back at this point, because for his deadlift, we've put in some conventional, and it's really helped his deadlift and his lockout and everything. His back's getting a lot stronger, but he is starting to run into some recovery issues with that. So we're going to do high bar squat. It'll be a little bit less in the back. We can keep pushing the conventional, and that's what block 5, like, it's not a full block, just like a random thought, what it might kind of look like. And then we might potentially do a couple more sets, a little bit less intensity. So for instance, it might be something like, instead of a 2x4, it might be like a 4x2 with like the same weight, just so he has even more practice and more confidence with repeating the exact same weight, just the same reps even, but literally more sets, gives you a lot more confidence. And then what we could also do is I want like about half the volume to be high bar, half the volume to be low bar, is we could, instead of having a high bar secondary and then a low bar primary, we might end up doing like one set that's on each day as a top set, just to really keep that confidence in, and then bias like more sets and higher reps on the back offs for both of those days. But we'll see. We're still a couple weeks away from that, so time to think it over and see what happens. Tomorrow, or maybe not tomorrow, but the next case study I do will be out sometime this week, within the next couple days, depending on what video I put out first. It's kind of the opposite volume, so it's a deadlifter instead of a squatter, and it's like triple this volume or something. So it's definitely like a polar opposite case, like one of the lowest volume squatters on the team versus the highest volume deadlifter on the team. So that'll be a pretty fun one to go over. Let me see. I think that's pretty much everything. Yeah, I think that is pretty much everything. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments or anything. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it. Thanks for the suggestions lately. Those have been a big help. I'm gonna make those videos within the next like week. I'm writing them down. I have a like schedule, so I'm trying to like weave those in and out. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one.